What's going on, guys? Spud here, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Roundup. As you can see, we've now got the webcam on for these. We're just going to see how it works. Obviously, it's not a huge episode today. There's a few things I want to talk about though. As well, I've realised the audio issue. It was actually an issue. It wasn't really an issue. It was just I had different delays on because for when I was streaming on Twitch. But I've turned them off now, so any clips now should work fine with no audio delay. I do apologise about that in the last one, but a massive thank you for the support on the last one. It was actually a 1 of 10, and it was the most views you've had on a roundup by some distance. And I'm recording this on Sunday, and it only was released on Wednesday, and I just really appreciate the support. It means so much. I love making these. It's so fun to make these. Everything about it. I love making the thumbnails. You know, I try and change it up each week with a different colour. Obviously, I didn't expect double green because I thought FaZe would win the event, but obviously OpTic did. So yeah, please like and subscribe if you are new. It is free to subscribe to the channel. It takes about 5 seconds and it means a lot to me. Obviously as well, follow us on TikTok. We've got a new TikTok. Where we've been uploading a little bit. It's mainly just highlights from the episodes plus like predictions for the major as well. So in today's episode, we're going to be having a quick look at OpTic's breaking point cards and also a little bit of the process, which is OpTic's documentary based off Major 3. We're also going to be looking at Rostermania. Obviously, there was a change. Should have other teams made a change? Will they still make a change? We'll have to see. We're also looking at the current standings going into the last major before champs and which teams I want to see in champs. We're also going to be doing a tier list on the current teams where I think they're at personally. And we're also going to be doing a prediction for this week's matches. Without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So obviously we've got OpTic here. They obviously won the major, but this is based off the whole split. So obviously their hard point is superb, 20-4. You can't really go wrong with that. Pretty solid in the search. The control does need a little bit of work, especially against the top teams. But again, they did lose to Carolina on LAN as well on that control. The only control that they won in the whole major was the final, like the grand finals against Ultra, I think. So as you can see, Dashi with that 99. I think I read that was his first ever 99. So it kind of shows I think he was probably the MVP of the whole split, whereas Shotzi was the MVP of the finals, which again both were deserved. But you can see the purples there for Dashi, in search and in control. You know, he's already a solid hill time player and hardpoint. This OpTic team works really well, and I would be shocked if this wasn't the same OpTic team next season. To be honest, I think it would be stupid to change it. I think all 4 players played really well here at this split. Obviously, they went 11-2. The only losses to FaZe Online and Ultra at the in the winners bracket. So yeah, I mean that hard point as well. That is brilliant. They only lost 4 hard points in the entire series, entire split, and 2 of them were on LAN. One against Ultra in winners round 2, and one against FaZe. They won all their other hard points. Moving on, we've obviously got the process. Also, just another brief thing. I did change my Twitter handle, so if you follow me on Twitter, that's my new Twitter. It's obviously the same name and profile picture, same bio and everything. Nothing like that's changed, but that's just to kind of show that there's obviously a slight difference. So obviously this is the process, and I really liked what Coach JP said here. So I'm just going to play the clip.
I took the mic, and usually I'll go through like a few tendencies of the team or something, but I kind of like at least for the Rio, I kind of just went away with that because I knew after that Rio, going to the Rio, there was no way they were losing this map. So on the mic, I basically said, next time we talk to you guys, you're champions.
JP is very cool, calm, collected, very, smart, very like he keeps us level-headed for sure. But when he said that, it was over. Honestly, that line was cold. I'm not gonna lie. And we said that, and we just went out that Rio, and we knew it was ending it.
So obviously, that was after they won the control against Toronto. It was 3-0. Just needed one more map. They did that, and then they absolutely slammed Ultra in that Rio hardpoint, and obviously won the championship. And yeah, obviously really good for every OpTic fan, and I think it was kind of good as well for the COD League, because whenever OpTic win an event, which obviously it's been 800 days, I think it also brings a bit more, what's the word? Well, more interactions, but like more audience on the CDL, which I think is always a good thing. So yeah, that was pretty good. The whole process is really good, by the way. I recommend watching it on OpTic's YouTube. Next, we move on to Rostermania. So obviously Boston have had a season to forget. Like, we know that. The chance of making champs is now pretty much impossible. I think realistically they had to get at least 30 points this stage, and they got 0. But bringing Pentagram in was probably the worst decision of the lot. Actually, no, I still think dropping Slasher was the worst. But they've brought in Major Maniac, who obviously has been on the CDL before, most recently last year with the Florida Mutineers towards the start of the season. He's obviously an AR player, but obviously has a lot of experience that he can give to Snoopy, can give to Beans. And obviously he's an AR player. That would mean they'd have 2 AR players with Beans. So Priester is now going to be on the SMG. I wish they'd went for a move like this in Major 3 rather than bringing Pentagram in. They would have had a chance. They've lost too many Game 5s now this season. Looking at their recent results, it's a lot of 3-2s. If those go their way, if they had the ice to win those Game 5s, they could be like 5th. Potentially. Honestly, that's how much, like, they're not as bad as people make out, but you play them on Search and Destroy, and you're gonna beat them. Only the Legion lost to them on a Search, but then it went to a map 5, I'm pretty sure, and the Legion won the map 5. Obviously, it's risky for Major Maniac's stock, some people think, because obviously going into a team which is unlikely to get champs, you've literally got one major to prove why you should be in the league next season. But I would rather, if I was him, I think he's making the right choice. Looking at their bracket for their qualifiers, there's a few games in there that they could definitely win. And I think if he does well, that'll give him a good chance of being on a roster next year, regardless if it's Boston or not. So other teams obviously could have made changes. So there was, we'll start with Minnesota Rocker, top 12 finish. They're a good team in Search. Just because Standy's a good Search player, they're pretty bad. Apart from that, I don't think they'll make champs unless they make a roster change, but it looks like they're going to keep the roster. I think accuracy and gunless just don't work together. I think Linz has dropped off like a cliff since losing Vivid. I think dropping Vivid was the wrong decision. I mean, yeah, dropping Awakening was the right call. I think with Rocker as well, they're just not, the maps just aren't as good for them anymore because of how their pacing is. I think they miss the Skid Rows, the Invasion hardpoints. Those were maps that they'd probably prefer to play than a 6-star or a Rio potentially. But yeah, it's not looking good for Minnesota. Obviously LA Thieves. There was a lot of talk about LA Thieves after Kremps 5-19 against the Heretics on subbase. But it looks like they're going to stick with the same roster. There was obviously some people saying that Kremp wasn't sat with the rest of the LA Thieves guys at the major. But it looks like the roster's going to carry on. I think it's a tough one because I think Kremp has good maps, but he's really inconsistent, and I think they need that consistency if they want to get 5th seed, ready for champs. I mean, qualify for champs, because they're only in by 5 points at the moment. They've only won one map or one series on LAN, this season. So yeah, they've got to have. I think if they get 3 wins online, they should be in champs. But yeah, it looks like they're going to stay the same. Obviously, there's LAG. If LAG actually had interest in investing in the league again, they're going to get their money back. But obviously, the guard who is part of who own LAG, who also, and obviously that's owned by the Cronkies, who also own like Arsenal, for example. They want to sell the spot now that they're going to get their investment money back. I think the better that the time when LAG leave the league, and probably the Legion as well, it's for the better. If I was them, if it was a serious organisation, they would have dropped Fame. They'd have dropped probably Diamond Con and kept Flames and Estrel and brought in a new sub and a new AR and tried to actually qualify for champs because they're only 10 points off. But it looks like they're going to keep the same roster. And they've won, I think, 5 series online this year. I don't know how the hell they beat FaZe, but yeah, realistically, it's not good enough. It is not good enough. And then moving on to the next part is obviously the standings. Here they're provided by CDL Intel. So obviously, I don't think they've done like an announcement that they're guaranteed to have qualified, but obviously FaZe, OpTic, Toronto, and New York have all qualified for champs. I'm pretty sure it's impossible for those 4 not to qualify, but it's definitely not for the top 3. But obviously, it's still the battle for who gets first seed, who gets second seed, and obviously who gets third seed. However, for these teams, I don't think it would make a huge difference on who they play. I would expect all 3 teams to win their first match at champs. And whoever gets New York is the closest one. But if Hydra has a good series, you've lost. So it's which of the 4 teams would I actually like to see in champs? So obviously we'll go for the team that I really want to see in champs. Obviously for Clayster being in that roster, it is the Ravens. If they'd beat Seattle Surge, they would have been in 6th, potentially 5th, depending. No, it would have been. I think it would have been 6th actually because of map count or series count. And they would have had a good chance because they've got their online split. You've got a few tough games. They actually had on paper the hardest split, and they managed to get winners bracket, but disappointingly only came top 8 because I think top 6 should have been realistic for them. I actually thought they were going to get top 4. I had a Ravens run in my mind. Didn't happen. Obviously, Clayster hasn't been in champs since Cold War, so it's been a few years. He was obviously disappointed not to be last year in champs, but it was kind of a uphill battle for most of the year, whereas now they've got a chance where last year they were relying on Rocket to lose matches, just wasn't happening. This year, as long as they just win the games that they can win, they should be okay. I think they have to win at least one on LAN. With 5th to 11th, I think you have to win at least one of your LAN matches to get champs, unless you literally go 6-1, 5-2 in your qualifiers. So obviously the Ravens is the first team. I want to say LA Thieves in the champ spot because I think they have potential still. I think, I think they could probably get a top 6, maybe I can't see it being not the top 4 at champs. The top 4 being 1st to 4th. It's a shame, but yeah, Thieves, and then I actually want to see Miami in champs just because of how they've done in Major 3. Now, obviously, I also didn't point this out when I talked about the Rostermania stuff. The head coach has been released after a top 6 finish, which is quite interesting. Obviously, I wonder if their other coach is just going to be the head coach now. But obviously, I'm a big fan of Real. He was my Rookie of the Year prediction before the season started. I think if they have a good Major 4, he could probably still get top 5, even though he's pretty much only been in for two splits and a little bit at the start. But they played OpTic close, won a map against FaZe. obviously beat the Thieves, which was a bit of a shock, and I think not really many people had them to beat Legion as well. And finally, the last team I want to see in Champs is Seattle Surge. It's actually the top 8 as it is now, but obviously potentially a different order, because I'd rather FaZe didn't play Ravens. I'd rather the Ravens played Seattle, because they've actually beaten them twice this season, one on LAN and one online. So yeah, I really like the Seattle Surge roster. I obviously I couldn't see them making a change, but obviously you could have argued maybe Brezzy. But obviously I like Kyler because he's obviously been on OpTic before. 04 just seems like a downbeat guy. From obviously the Little Man Beef was quite good as well, and Abuza was superb on LAN. And I think he could play like that against the top teams. They have a chance of potentially causing an upset against like New York, for example. So yeah, those are the teams that I would like to see in Champs. Will that happen? No, it never does. For me, I'd be gutted if Ravens don't make Champs, and I'd be disappointed if LA Thieves didn't make Champs, but if like Miami or Seattle didn't, it's not the end of the world. So moving on, it's now time for our tier list. So it's S, A, B, C, D, whatever you want to call it. Best, decent, mid, worst, awful. So we'll start with. We'll just do it in order. So we've got Atlanta FaZe. I'm going to order them as well, by the way. So for example, if FaZe was here, that is the first. Then if we had OpTic there, for example, it's second. If we had LAG there, it would be third. But so it's kind of hard to describe. So for D, for example, if I put Boston there, I think they're the worst. And then so for D, it's different because it's like you want to show which is the worst. So anyway, D is obviously where Boston go in the worst tier, because we'll briefly go through FaZe. I think FaZe are still the best team in the game. Yeah, their S&D is the only mode they need work on. They actually were really poor on LAN at Search and Destroy. I wonder if the coach will also tell them to stop shooting bodies as much as they're doing, because they did get humbled a bit. And I think that was kind of good to see, in a way, just so the league didn't just become a one-team league, because no one wants that. So it was nice to see, obviously, them not even reach grand finals. Legion's a tough one. I'm going to put them in C, though. I don't think they're on the same tier as the Boston Breach. They obviously can still make champs. I think their roster's still quite good, especially Gio and Nero. And I still quite like Attach, but Attach has dropped off. I think, again, it could just be the maps being removed and added in that don't help the Legion. Will they make champs, though, is a different question. I'm just not sure. It kind of depends on who they get in their winners bracket match / well, basically, it's if who they get in their losers bracket match, because they'll probably go down to losers if they get winners. Oh, this is a tough one with the Heretics. This is actually quite a tough one. Might have sounded like a Minecraft villager there. Miami Heretics. I'll put them in B. I know I could have done one with more tiers, like, so you could have had more tiers, but I'm happy with this one. Miami, again, I'm interested to see how they do. I'm not too sure on their fixture difficulty. I know they have OpTic first, which obviously Pred versus Miami. Pred hates Miami. I expect Miami to lose that, probably 3-1. But my only issue for Miami is they got 6-star S&D on every single map they played on LAN in game 2, and they won every single time. So surely teams are going to veto 6-star search against them. So they'll have to have another trick up their sleeve, because they beat FaZe, they beat OpTic, they beat Thieves, they beat Legion. Yeah, they played Legion on this as well, didn't they? So yeah, they obviously had a really good 6-star search on LAN, but will they be allowed to play it again? I don't think so, but we'll see. This is where a lot of people have been doing tier lists, and a lot of people have had the same answers. Like the same, not yeah, kind of answers. Sorry, sometimes I really struggle what to say. LAG, I've seen most people put in like the same tier as Vegas. I'm actually putting them as the worst, and that's coming from a Boston Breach team that hasn't won in God knows how many games and a 50 CDL points. But I'm putting LAG in D, but I'm putting them as the worst team currently. My reasoning for that is just I think their respawns are really poor. Estrel's the only consistent player on their team. And I just think without a roster change, they're just not going to make champs. And I feel like the Breach team has better players, but if they could get their search and destroy sorted out under Major Maniac, I think Boston Breach could probably end up being in the C tier before the season ends, sorry. But obviously they've left it too late. I think this LAG team will not make champs. If they make champs, I will be shocked. I think every single team beats them online and at LAN at the moment, except probably maybe Minnesota, but that's not a guarantee. It's hard to tell with Minnesota. But yeah, I am putting the Gorillas in the bottom tier and as bottom spot as well. New York for A. The reason I mentioned about more tiers is I've seen some people potentially put New York 2 tiers below the S tier. Good team. Consistently 4th best this season. Kismet's really struggling. Sky's had a pretty poor LAN, I think, but I think he's still doing decent. Sib improved, which is good for them, and Hydra's obviously Hydra, unbelievable player. Carolina, this is tough because obviously they only came top 8 in LAN. I'm still going to put them in B, but I'm going to put them behind the Heretics just because the Heretics have got 10 extra CDL points and obviously got a top 6 at the last event. Minnesota, I'm going to put basically in 10th. They have to make a roster change. If they don't make a roster change, I could potentially put them in D. They're lucky to be in C, to be honest. They are lucky to be in C because they're just it's not working out for them. They've got to drop either accuracy or gunless. Accuracy was so good stage 1, so was Lynn's. And now they're just a completely different team. I think I can't remember how many points they had before the last 2 stages, but they've barely won any games since stage 1. Seattle, I'm going to put at the top of the B tier. I think these guys have finally got a solution that works. Top 6 at LAN, obviously really impressive. And yeah, I think out of all the bottom 8 teams, they're the team that could most likely cause an upset. I'm just not convinced by the other ones as much. Obviously, as I said, I still think FaZe are the best team in the game, and that's coming from an OpTic fan. I'm going to put OpTic, though, second in S. I think they were the second best team before this event, and I still think they are now. But they finally beat FaZe, so that will hopefully for them, that will give them a chance to do it again. I don't think they play each other in this online split, so they only have the chance to play each other on LAN. Again, Major 4 and Champs. I obviously think they will meet again on LAN. I'd be shocked if they didn't. But I think the fact that OpTic finally beat them will help, and the fact that they beat them on a high-rise search as well was huge. And it shows the effort that OpTic have put in to try and work on those maps, rather than just vetoing them straight away. LA Thieves, obviously top 8. Oh, I'm just not sure which. It's either to put them in front of the Ravens or behind. I'm actually going to put them behind. And my only reason is just the inconsistencies of both SMGs, but Jordan Thieves is a bit more consistent. Obviously, Ghosty has been the standout player for this Thieves team. I think B is fair for them, to be honest. Obviously, map 5 against the Breach. they've only won one series on LAN, and it was a game 5 against Boston. Obviously, Champs is on LAN, Major 4 is LAN. I know there's no fans for the Major 4 LAN. It's still LAN. So yeah, we'll see what happens with them. And then obviously I'm putting Toronto Ultra in S, because putting them anywhere else would have just been stupid, to be honest. Third best team in the game. They beat FaZe and OpTic in at this event as well, and they're way better than New York. And now to finish off the episode, we're going to be doing our predictions for these matches. So Seattle versus Toronto, I think will be 3-1 to the Ultra. Obviously, Envoy and Insight need to improve. I mean, so does Kleenex. Envoy was actually quite good at the major. I feel like he's kind of the scapegoat, to be honest. This game is going to be interesting. The Burger Ball. I don't know who wins. I think if Minnesota haven't made a change and they lose, they will actually have to make a change. I'm going to go for an upset as a 3-1 to Breach, because I think Breach win all 3 respawns before. I think Breach win all respawns. So I think Breach will beat Rocker 3-1. This is another huge game on the road for champs. I think Ravens know if they lose this game, they're not making champs potentially. That's how much of a big game this is. I think Ravens take this 3-1. Thankfully, there's no 2-game weekends and 2-match game days anymore. Sorry. Then we've got the Battle of LA. I think Thieves take this 3-0. Vegas versus Ultra. I think it'll probably be 3-1 to Ultra. Miami versus OpTic, I think 3-1 to OpTic. That seems to be a 3-1 most of the time between these two now, after the first couple of 3-0s. And then on the Sunday, there's actually 4 matches on the Sunday. That's what we like to see. Ravens versus New York, that's tough. I'm going to go 3-1 New York, but it could go either way. Rocker versus Surge, I'm going to go for 3-1 to Surge, just like it was at the major. Obviously, Standy got 17 kills in that search. Boston versus Thieves, I think will be 3-2 to Thieves. I think it'll be another game 5 loss for the Breach. But definitely 2 games that Breach could end up potentially winning, which would be huge. And FaZe versus New York, I think FaZe will come back frying after the disappointments at the major. Oh, hang on, that must be. Oh wait, yeah, that's a Saturday match. Yeah, that's a Saturday match. These ones are Sundays. Oh, so hang on, that's a bit disappointing that FaZe New York isn't the last match in, as it's the best one. But I go FaZe 3. I'm gonna go FaZe 3-0, to be honest. And then Vegas versus OpTic, I think it'll be 3-1 to OpTic. Well, that is going to be the end of this roundup episode. Hope you enjoyed. Drop a like and subscribe if you're new. It is really appreciated. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Well, hopefully we've seen some good Call of Duty, even if it is online. See you for now.